My name is Elena Whitmore. I'm 29 years old, and I didn't know how fast a life could tilt sideways until the person I loved laughed at the wrong moment and everyone else followed. It wasn't loud. It never starts loud. It was subtle, casual. The kind of laugh that slips under the table and wraps around your ankle before you realize you're being dragged somewhere you don't want to go. Mark Caldwell and I had been together for 3 years, long enough to build routines that feel permanent. Shared grocery lists written in shorthand only we understood. Sunday mornings that belonged to us without discussion. Conversations about marriage that weren't urgent, but felt inevitable. We had good jobs, a comfortable apartment, and a shared belief that we were stable. On paper, everything looked solid. In reality, there was a crack I kept calling a scratch. Mark had a habit. He called it teasing. He liked to make jokes about me in front of other people. Not private jokes. Not affectionate humor. Public commentary. My clothes. The way I got excited about things. How seriously I took my work. How openly I talked about feelings. Every comment came wrapped in a smile. Delivered like a joke. And every time his friends laughed just a little too quickly. Like they'd been trained when to react. I told myself I was too sensitive. I told myself couples tease each other. I told myself love meant compromise. What I didn't realize was that compromise slowly turned into silence. The night everything broke was at his friend Melissa's birthday dinner. 8 of us, sitting around a long table in a trendy Italian restaurant downtown. Low lighting. Exposed brick. Menus without prices. The kind of place that pretends intimacy is part of the experience. I'd had a brutal week at work and honestly wanted to stay home. But Mark insisted. You'll feel better once you're out, he said. Halfway through dinner, the conversation drifted to Valentine's Day plans. Weekend trips, cabins, elaborate surprises. Someone asked Mark what we were doing. He smiled and said, Elena made reservations at that French place she loves. And she wrote me this handwritten letter about her feelings. For a split second, I thought he was being sweet. Then someone laughed. A letter? Like a diary? Mark grinned wider. It was a lot. Very her. The table laughed. My chest tightened. I thought you liked that, I said quietly. You said you did. He shrugged. I like normal romantic gestures. Not diary-level stuff. It's a bit much. A bit much. The words landed heavier than he expected. I repeated them softly. A bit much? Mark leaned back, amused. Relax. You're too sensitive. Honestly, not exactly a real woman when you take everything so personally. The laughter exploded. That was the moment something inside me went completely still. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I smiled, just slightly. Maybe, I said calmly. But a real woman doesn't stay where she's mocked. The table went silent. Mark's smile faltered. What's that supposed to mean? He asked. It means I'm done being your entertainment. I stood, placed cash on the table to cover my share and the tip, and said, enjoy dinner. Then I walked out. Mark didn't follow me right away. That told me everything. I didn't go home that night. Not to be dramatic. Not because I wanted him to chase me. I didn't go home because I knew if I did, I'd fold. I'd apologize for making things awkward. I'd explain my feelings again, softer this time. I'd convince myself that love meant enduring discomfort quietly. Instead, I went somewhere neutral. Somewhere without shared memories stitched into the walls. When I sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, my hands were shaking. Mark called 6 times. I didn't answer. Around 2 a.m., I checked my phone again and saw a message from an unknown number. Hey Elena, it's Rachel. Mark's ex. I know this is weird, but can we talk? My stomach dropped. Rachel wasn't a mystery. Just a name Mark mentioned occasionally, usually followed by an eye roll and the phrase, "Too emotional." I stared at the message, then replied, "About what?" The typing bubble appeared instantly. "About Mark. About tonight. There are things you deserve to know." I called her. She answered on the first ring. "Thank you for calling," she said quickly. "I'm really sorry to intrude. I just wish someone had warned me, and I don't want to stay quiet anymore." She told me Mark had laughed about dinner afterward. Said I stormed out because I couldn't take a joke. Said I'd be back in a few days. Then she told me the rest. How he mocked her feelings in front of friends. How apologies only came when she threatened to leave. How he framed kindness as weakness and sensitivity as a flaw. I kept thinking if I could just be less sensitive, he'd stop, she said. But that was the trap. He needed me to feel small. When we hung up, it was nearly 3 a.m. I didn't sleep. The next morning my phone was full of messages, apologies, accusations, promises to change. I didn't respond. 5 days later, I went back to the apartment while Mark was at work. I packed everything that was mine. Clothes, books, photos I'd taken. The lease was in his name. He'd insisted it was easier that way. At the time, I thought he was being practical. Now I saw it clearly. I left my key on the counter with a note. "I've moved out completely. I'll send money for utilities for the days I was there. Take care." No hope. No maybe. Mark tried remorse like a costume. Voice notes filled with perfect words and no real accountability. Then when that didn't work, the anger surfaced. "You're really doing this over one joke." There it was. Not love. Control. He showed up at my job a week later, standing in the lobby like someone who'd lost something valuable and was furious. It didn't fall back into his hands. "We need to talk." "No, we don't. I'm in therapy," he said quickly. "I don't care," I replied calmly. "You spent 3 years teaching me to be embarrassed for being loving. Please don't come here again," I said. "This is my workplace." I walked away. That was the first time I didn't rescue him from discomfort. 3 months passed quietly. No dramatic closure. Just days stacking gently into something sturdier than what I'd lived in before. I moved into my own apartment. 1 bedroom. Good light. Furniture chosen intentionally. For the first time, everything in my space existed because I wanted it there. Therapy taught me something important. People who benefit from your silence will call your boundaries selfish. Mark eventually stopped texting. Rachel told me he was already repeating the pattern with someone new. I felt relief, not satisfaction. I went on a few casual dates. Nothing serious. I was learning how to exist without translating myself into something easier to digest. One afternoon, a coworker asked me to get coffee. When I mentioned I'd had a rough day, he didn't joke or deflect. He just asked if I wanted to talk about it. It felt revolutionary. Here's what I've learned. Being emotional isn't weakness. It's information. The right person won't laugh when you're vulnerable. They won't turn your softness into a spectacle. Love doesn't require you to shrink. I don't hate Mark. I hope he figures out why he needs to belittle people to feel secure. But that work isn't mine anymore. I'm not too sensitive. I'm exactly sensitive enough. And the right person, if and when they show up, will understand that without laughing.